Well, here's a simple study that was done by the Osthaus group. And it's absolutely elegant because it's a detour again, and all the dog has to do is round the detour through the opening on the right of the fence and meet their owner, and their owner, of course, will give them social praise and a treat. Well, there were some groups of dogs who were given the opportunity to round this detour once or twice, and then there was another group of dogs that repeated this action, going through this right entrance through the barrier 6 or 7 or 8 times. So much more repetition in solving this problem. Now, you would think that the animal that had more repetition would understand the problem better, would do better when you gave them a slightly different situation than the animal that hadn't had as much experience. Well, you would be wrong, because what happened was when the Osthaus group looked at the group of dog that had more experience, what they did at a very high level, and they had a very hard time overcoming, was the following response, which is they would go back to where they had been successful, even though they could see that the area that they had been going through in the fence was now completely closed. With their very own eyes, they could perceive that the solution they were using before was gone, and they could not successfully go directly to the open door in the other side of the fence. So basically the fence was just shifted, so now the opening that was there has been closed, and now there's an opening where there wasn't one. The dogs that had less experience very quickly, without making any mistakes, would go to the opening in the door and showed much more flexibility. So if you're interested in flexible problem solving, it is not always the case that repetition and more practice is going to allow a dog to solve novel problems. In fact, sometimes it is going to be the case that because experience has been repeated so much, it's going to make the dogs have a hard time solving a just slightly different problem. So the other way that cognition can work against you, even though dogs are so social, and dogs obviously are able to learn things from others really quickly, is it's not the case that they're always trying to cooperate and communicate with us. Sometimes they're trying to understand us to take advantage of different situations. And one of the great examples of this, and this is one of the things, if you decide to do Cognition, you can use the cunning games are based on this work, where dogs have been shown to be very sensitive to what you can and cannot see, potentially. And what was discovered was, depending on how you orient yourself, after you forbid them from taking food, you'd say, put some food on the ground and say, don't take the food. And if you continue to watch them, versus you start reading a book, versus you turn your back to them, versus you leave the room, you see an increasing decrease in their obedience to you. And so what it seems to be is that dogs are actually paying attention to whether you're watching or not, and they can use, obviously, your presence or absence in a room. That doesn't surprise anybody, probably. But what's even more interesting is, or I guess what's most interesting, is the person reading the book who's still present and is even facing the dog but distracted and not looking with their eyes. Many dogs, not every dog, but many dogs are sensitive to that and will be more likely to go take the treat you forbid them from taking than if you continue to watch them with your eyes open. There have been versions of this where people open and close their eyes, and dogs show sensitivity to that. So this is an example where if you're training your dog and you can't figure out why your dog's never listening to you, you may have a dog that is particularly cunning because they're using your eyes and your body posture to decide whether or not you can see them or not, and whether they have to listen to you. In fact, Julianne Kaminsky's newest study shows that dogs even know whether you can see them in the dark or not, and that if they're trying to be naughty, they often will go into the dark as opposed to some lighted area where you could see them misbehave. So in summary, I think a cognitive approach is really different than traditional approaches based on behaviorism, in terms of trying to teach geniuses and dog geniuses, in this case, how to do new things or behave. I think that understanding dog cognition can help us design new training strategies. I think Cognition can work against a trainer because dogs are not just operant conditioning machines. They have goals that are independent from their owner. They have skills to obtain those goals, and dogs may disobey because they know you can't see them. dogs can work for you, since dogs are so remarkable at communicating and learning from humans. So I think you can use the genius of dogs to your advantage when you train them. And I hope that a cognitive approach will be one that helps really push things forward in terms of what we're able to teach our dogs, and will make what is already an amazing vocation of training dogs even more powerful and more successful.